hybrid, right? I need to get out every now and then and see people. Wisdom remote, buy your remote. Nobody wants to go to the office again. Why? Remote work, in person sprinkled in there somewhere. I think it should be a healthy mix of both, right? I think it's a healthy mix of both for me personally. Um, it helps you connect. Not that you can't connect virtually, but I just feel like it's a bit different when you are connecting with people physically. There's a lot more that you can learn from somebody when you are sitting right beside them than when you're on a call. Mayowa remote, Operemi remote. Operemi, we're not on the same page anymore. What happened? Oduayo hybrid with flexibilities to choose when I want to be on site. You want to choose only stay on one side. If they serve lunch at the office, then maybe. Hmm. You're making me think about something. Maybe the reason why I like hybrid is because they give us lunch. That's possibly why I like hybrids. Because there's food. I know that there's food waiting. Yeah. Okay, have you seen Lagos traffic? I mean, yes, there's that as well. Um, Celine, hybrid. Okay. Let's close it here. This was really nice knowing what you guys prefer. So let's move on. Thank you all for responding. Okay, so we've come to the end of the game. Thank you for participating. Moving forward to why we are here. Drum roll. Who should drum roll now? Celebrate. Okay. Thank you. Enough. Thank you. So today we have Adekunle. If you don't know Adekunle is an OG in the industry. You can go and check him out on LinkedIn if you don't already know him. So Adekunle has, several years of experience within the ecosystem. So he has built things across different industries. He's currently director of program management at Mastercard. Right, he's leading different large scale programs, different initiatives. A lot of the products that he worked on are things that you have come across today. You may not know, but we don't know. We know you're not part of the caucus. Anyways, he has worked on so many things within the industry. He has also contributed to so many projects around digital banking, how banking is done today, mobile banking, and basically, customer experience. And one thing I really appreciate about this session, and I'm really looking forward to, is getting more insight into his experience, right? Because let's be real, 12 years is not beans. 12 years is a lot, and I can only imagine the kind of hurdles that he must have had to get through. Because we all know that in fintech, what really matters is not what you read; is basically um, the depth of the experience, trying out different things, working on different products. That's what matters here. But today, he's going to share with us how he has been able to navigate this industry, right? His experience, how he was able to, especially with politics as well. I know that's something that a lot of people are curious about. So ask your questions, he will answer it. Um, Not just learning about fintech, how to grow in it, how to adapt, because there's a lot of regulations, things are constantly changing, basically moving through the different phases at each time, right? So this conversation is an opportunity for us to learn from somebody that has walked through this path. So I want to say he walked so we could run. So yes. um yeah, so thank you, Adekunle, for joining us today. And can you please tell us, about your experience, give us a little background of what it's been like for you. And yeah, over to you. Thank you again for joining us.
Thanks, Betty, and thanks, Elizabeth, you both for having me. Really appreciate the, invitation to be part of this program. And hello, everyone. My name is Adekunle Yusuf. Betty has been talking about a lot of innovations that I'm just a, very cool, calm guy who wants to create change, and that has helped, me in the course of my career. I think it's more of the drive. So, speaking about my experience so far, I'd like to say, in the fintech space, success is really more around a mix of deep technical understanding, business acumen, and adaptability. And what this means is you need to be able to spin around the different business areas, right? Meaning that as a core developer, for example, you need to have insights into the business world and then also be able to adapt. And I would want to focus on some key areas, just to bullet point those areas. One will be to prioritize system reliability over speed. In the fintech space, we always want to move fast, break things, disrupt. But we've seen that that approach is kind of dangerous, right? Especially when handling people's money. And it's always best to prioritize system thinking, things like resilience and robust backend infrastructure to maintain customers' trust. Another pointer would be to master system thinking and judgment, right? Top employers today value the ability to understand how systems fail and how you can balance, for example, security with user experience. Some people will be of the school of thought to say, yeah, customers need to have a good experience, while the guys in control will tell you, you know what, we can't afford to lose money. So, having to be able to master, the system thinking and judgment is also, one of the things that I've been able to, learn over the years. Another pointer will be to build cross-border and contextual expertise, having to understand that, you can't replicate, solutions or inventions from other parts of the world. You need to be able to, design solutions or invent based on the problems in your local environment, right? One other pointer would be to develop a hybrid skill set, right? Today we know that pure technical skills aren't just enough, right? If you want to be a great professional, you have to be able to combine whatever core functionality you're doing now, like I said earlier, with things like data analytics, collaboration, stakeholder management, and also business acumen, because that's also key. The bottom line for any fintech is profitability. So the business part is always key. So irrespective of where you find yourself in the fintech space, you need to, eyeball what's the goal, what's the end goal, what's the objective in whatever we're doing. Bottom line is you need to be profitable, you need to make money, because that will sustain the business, that would also sustain you as a resource within that business environment. A key area, again, for me is leveraging emerging sectors for employment. Over time, like we know, fintech is not static. There are a couple of changes year in, year out. For example, the digital asset and virtual asset space, that's kind of new. A couple of years back, CBN was, came to, stop that. And in 2025, there was an act that was released to say, yes, we can embrace it. So that means, there's changes and things that, moving towards positive in terms of digital assets and things like blockchain. And this, if you're a good fintech resource, you need to start to legitimate your career path towards this sector, because that's the future of payments, right? And if you focus more on this area, then you can rest assured that at some point in time you're positioning yourself for the future in fintech. And then lastly, I'd like to stop with owning your learning and adaptability. You can never stop learning, right? Continuous upskilling is really mandatory. And what I would advise some of us to do is to always look out for training programs, that would build our talents, that would help with, treating our career transitions in the event where we want to transition into a different space, and then, try to learn, unlearn, and relearn. And that helps, in the in projecting yourself for many more years in this space. And I think I'll just have to stop here. Thanks, Betty.
All right, thank you. I actually do agree with you, the continuous upskilling, because if you feel like one moment you feel like you've already learned enough and you've covered everything that needs to be covered, and you just get to this point and you need something new entirely that was possibly out of your scope and you need to catch up on that. So yeah, you always have to learn. There's so much to learn. So thank you for sharing that with us. But because this masterclass is a bit different, it's not going to be Adekunle giving us, walking through a slide and all that. It's going to be a bit question and answer ish. So you can feel free to drop your questions as we go. So I will be asking a couple of questions, and then you can also ask your questions in the chat. So you can drop them, but I'm going to start with mine first. So the question that has been on my mind, I'm starting with me before I talk about other people. So the first question that I have for you is, when you reflect on your 12 plus years across banking and fintech, I know you've worked across different sectors, building different types of products. What are the biggest shifts you've seen in how careers are being built in the industry? What has changed within this time frame, within the last decade?
So I'd want to say that the key shifts would include moving from mandatory specialization, into focusing more on compliance and reliability compared to speed. Before now, it was more like, oh, fintech, the guys will spin it out. And at the end of the day, you find out that sometimes when you spin things out, then things break, right? Case in point, MTN was defrauded it was all over the news a couple of years back because they, went out too quickly. There was some compliance or implementation that were meant to have been done to curb fraud. That didn't happen, and they were exposed to, I think about 400 billion naira or something. And that's a cost, right? So I think the shift now has moved from the typical specialization into a compliance and reliability mindset. And, the emergence of non-technical roles in operations and growth. So right now, we're not really focusing more on just the engineers only in fintech. It's moving towards how do we bring in product managers, how do we bring in program managers, how do we bring compliance guys, how do we bring in the AML guys, just to ensure that end-to-end, every spectra is covered. I would say that, we've moved from the generalist coder to specialist with depth. We've moved from moving fast to the compliance-driven stability, like I mentioned. We've moved from, I just need only engineers to hybrid and non-tech roles. We've moved from, I would say, the Silicon Valley copycats, where you just copy and paste what others are doing, and then we've moved into contextual building, which is what is the local need and how do we solve for it. And that's why you have the likes of PiggyVest and Money Point, Flutterwave, and the likes, because what they're doing is looking into the problems within our ecosystem and see how we can solve for it. So it means it's contextual. We're looking into the problems within Nigeria or in the African space and then solving for it. We've moved from networking to continuous verifiable learning, meaning it's not just who you know, it's also the knowledge that you need to acquire in the space or the experience which you've had in the years that you've been in fintech. And I think I'll just stop at that. Thank you.
Okay, that actually makes sense. At least in the past few years, there's been a lot more focus in terms of compliance, because the kind of breaches that we've seen, it's been a lot. So that's something that a lot more people have been focusing on, and less on it's not just about the engineers, about the adjacent rules as well. We have products, compliance, operations, everybody that keeps the ball rolling. So thank you for that. That was such an insightful answer, at least having an insight into what it's been like in the past decade. Okay. So I'm going to ask another question now. So when you take a look, back, what do you think differentiated the people who progressed quickly in their careers versus those people that, let's say, they stayed stuck at a you know, mid-level stage for years? So what's the different differentiator here? Somebody that is progressing fast, moving fast, and somebody that just kind of stuck at mid-level. Because I know that that's a problem that a lot of people have. They progress, but then when they get to the mid-level parts, it takes a lot for them to cross over to that senior level. So what do you think is the differentiator here?
All right, thanks, Betty. Just to quickly give bullet points and maybe add to that. I think for those who progress quickly, one, I'll say they own business outcome and not just the task that they're given. They tend to, ask, how does my work drive revenue? How does my work reduce fraud or lower churn? Right? How, rather than just, oh yeah, operationality, I'm just doing my job and moving. You own the business outcome. You're thinking about not just the task, but the end result. Those who move or progress quickly tend to master system thinking under pressure, right? This set of people tend to understand how a payment failure impacts compliance, for example, or how does a payment failure impacts customer support, settlement, right? They tend to want to fix the root causes and not the symptoms, right? And because they want to fix the root cause so that it doesn't occur again. People who want to progress are the ones who build regulatory fluency early, right? They are being proactive when their compliance or regulatory guidelines are being shared, maybe AML and KYC rules or CBN are sent in a guideline. The guys who want to progress are the ones who want to quickly understand what those rules are and how it impacts their business. People who want to progress are people who would develop deep, wide skills, right? They have core specialization. You can be a back-end engineer, but you have adjacent skill set like maybe data analytics, like I mentioned earlier, or you also have a strong stakeholder management that you can always engage your stakeholders. And this particular skill set helps them to be relevant in their core job. So rather than being an engineer, you're just locked into your system and you're coding and you're doing all your, coding on the system. You also reach out, you do some legwork, you engage your team members, you engage your stakeholders, and you also have some sense of business acumen, like I mentioned, and you have some data analytics. So a rounder is skill set that will make you progress in this space. I would also want to say you're also proactively managing your visibility, right? You share learnings, you speak up during strategy sessions, you speak up during your cadences, you speak up during your daily calls. That's an evidence of somebody who wants to progress, right? And then you also adapt to new tools, right? When there are new inventions, there's AI now, for example, you're using that to deliver your work speedily, right? That is someone who wants to progress in the fintech space. And you're not waiting for instructions, right? You're being proactive, you execute reliably, you suggest new ideas and you're not just locked up in your space. And then you also lastly avoid ambiguity. When a project has, kind of fuzzy requirements or regulatory uncertainty, you are the one who will disengage instead of, you are the one who would engage and not disengage instead of, thinking, it's none of my business. I just want to do my task and leave. So those are the people who progress in the fintech space. For those who don't, then they are the ones who focus only on their technical outputs. I'm just a guy who, ignore other things. I'm just, focusing on what I'm meant to deliver, and I deliver it and I go home. Yeah, you might not progress. People, for example, resist cross-functional collaboration. They are not so much happy. You're always in conflict with other business stakeholders. Somebody's bringing a requirement document and is telling you, oh, this is what we want to achieve. And then you're fighting back or kicking back and saying, no, it can't work, rather than thinking through how best can we solve for it, or innovating or researching what other options can be, adopted to get the results. Those people don't progress in this space. People who, for example, fail to document or communicate impact, right? You're not somebody who's I know during my days in Sterling, the guys would be like, you know what, that's the technical guys. I was more on the business and product space. And the technical guys would be like, I can't just make it as simple and as clear as possible. I don't think I can write any documentation. That is simply saying, I just want to do my work and leave. Those kind of people would not really progress, because you just be an operational guy wherever you are. But when you're able to bring a mix of the different business, partners or stakeholders that you work with, then you're putting yourself in a space where you can become technical lead, for example, and not just a developer, right? If you're waiting to be told to upskill, then you will not progress. So I think that's just a difference between those who are willing and yet to progress in the career, and those who do not have those ability to, those characteristics are separate. Thanks, Betty.
Okay, that's actually very interesting. So based on what you've said, there are two types of people. How do I say it? The missionaries and the mercenaries. So the mercenaries just want to do their job and call it a day. Then the missionaries are people that are concerned with the business outcome.
End-to-end, correct.
Exactly. They're more proactive. They're not waiting for, or when there's an issue, we'll fix. We're thinking ahead and how can I take the business forward? And there's also something you said about visibility. All the people that chose building in let the results speak for themselves. I think you also chose let the results speak for themselves, and that's contradicting this because you said
no, but yeah. So let me explain why I said results speaking for it. So, and I would use an example, right? So when we're building one bank is Sterling mobile app today. Myself and my team, conceptualized it. We had Sterling One Pay before then, and it was just a very static mobile app that we couldn't enhance in terms of feature. And the MD said, guys, let's build our own thing. Why are we outsourcing through a third party? And then he said, I would build a tech team. And we brought in a lot of devs into Sterling. And I think Sterling is one of the banks that have the most developers in terms of employment in Nigeria. And that's for a reason, for innovation, for change and the likes. And when we were building, we went out there putting out comms to say we're building. We knew what we wanted to do. We were having scoping engagements to know what are the things we want to put on the app. We're speaking to different business units to say, guys, that are in operations, from the financial team to trade services to treasury operations, because we just didn't want to build an app where it's just for the customers for payments. We wanted to build an ecosystem where for every transaction that customers engage the banks on, you can always do it on the app without having to come to the branch or the bank branch. And the MD was spot on then, saying, I want to reduce as much as possible foot traffic to my branches, which was another way to cut costs, right? Because operationality, looking at the operationality, you have to run the branch, you have to buy diesel, you have to pay. But if you're able to, as much as possible, reduce foot traffic, then it means you can say, oh yeah, if we have 37 branches, we can cut down 5 because we don't really need them. We put in as many functionality on the app. And that's building, a system that works. Now, why I said it's better you let the results speak is it was when we launched, and then people started, running transactions. The guys who typically would have gone to the branch to fill a Form A because they want to transfer money for studies, or they want to transfer money to their siblings or a family member abroad, were able to do that in the app. It was validation in the feedback on Google. It was validation direct to on the customer survey. It was, we were getting the best survey in the bank at that time, because people were happy about, you know, what the new mobile app that we had launched and the functionality it could do. It wasn't just a payment, I want to transfer and I'm getting invoice. It was that this is now a bank branch in your palms. And I think when you do that, you're not speaking about, oh, this is what we want to build, or the app would speak for itself, and then people would, you know, be your advocate. And I think that's why I picked, you know, let the results speak for itself. You know, if you're building a house, it's when you finish the house that people will see. But when you're building the house and you're saying, oh, this is where the kitchen is going to be, and it's still in carcass, people won't see the beauty. It's when you've finished, you've done your interior and everything is working, that you would now be proud to say, yes, this is what we did.
Okay. Thank you so much for that response. I think it's a bit more clear now since you've explained it. So guys, please feel free to drop your questions. I'll take a few more questions and I'll go into the comments, but yes, drop them and then we'll get to it. So the next question I have for you: what are some key inflection points you've seen in strong fintech careers?
So I would say in a strong fintech career, a key, or some of the key inflection points or moments that, you know, would accelerate your growth would typically include you owning a critical failure or incident, right? Be the one who would stand up and say, yeah, you know, this failed. We've identified what the failure point is and we're going to fix it, and not, you know, throwing other people or pointing fingers, right? Transitioning from an executor to a strategist, right? Moving from how do I build this to we build it this way, or what are the trade-offs, right? Recommending and not typically just building something because compliance or unit economics says, you know, it won't work. Another key point would be, you know, you being able to navigate a regulatory or a crisis moment, right? How do you help a fintech or a corporate navigate through a CBN directive, for example, Naira redesign or fraud surge or something? You know, those who actually stay calm and solution-driven or solution-focused end up being indispensable, right? You see that corporates will not want to let you go because they know that over time you've been able to be calm in terms of distress or crisis, and you're able to also offer solutions. Another key pointer for me would be you being able to lead a cross-functional launch without formal authority, right? You being to be an engineer that can successfully coordinate product, legal, customer support, or other key stakeholders within the business, right? That helps to prove that you have leadership skills. And then also building or scaling a team. I see in the comments when we're having the icebreaker, some people are like, you know, I just want to be a contributor. I don't want to be a leader. But you need to start to learn how to coordinate. Let people start to see you that you're not just a contributor. You're not just coming to work to say, yes, I've worked my payday. I've worked for my pay for the day, and I'm just going back. You need to start to be visible and be contributing, right? And then show that you can also scale a team, even though you're not even given the responsibility yet. But you need to start to exemplify it and let your people leader or your team lead start to see that. And also, lastly, switching from pure tech, right, role to a hybrid one. I think I mentioned that before, where you're not just seeing yourself as a developer, but you're seeing yourself as both the developer, the business guy, the control guy, the legal guy, understanding the 360-degree areas in terms of what the objective of that implementation or feature or solution is, and being able to understand when, you know, you need to come to the party. This is my role as a developer. I need to deliver so that, you know, we can meet or reach the goal and objective or whatever, you know, we're building. So I'll think I'll stop here and hand over to you, Betty.
Okay. There's a comment from Alex. Alex said that so your team on one bank wanted to build a solution that would likely put an end to the livelihood of branch staff. What do you have to say about that?
Okay, so yes, that's typical. That's a typical view from somebody who's not looking at it, in a bigger picture, right? And I think when we did the service automation, people were not laid off. They were rather, put into other business functionality. In a bank, typically, there are business units where they have lesser headcounts, right? For example, you can never be too much in sales, for example. You can never be too much in marketing, for example. And I know some people say, no, that's not my skill set. But I've been an operations person in my banking career. I've been a marketer. I've been a regional rep for digital banking. I've been a product manager. I've been a program manager before I got to where I am. If I didn't have those kind of different experiences as I was, building my career, I won't be where I am today. I've worked with MTN as a customer service agent, the guys who will pick the call and say, thank you for choosing MTN. My name is Adekunle Yusuf. I did that, before I moved into banking. I also worked with Nigerian Television Authority as a presenter in one of those when I started off early days. So I have a bit of experience in every of these areas. And I think that's always a positive, right? Because you never can tell where you find yourself, and those experiences, will come into work for you. So yes, we automated the branch processes. Why? Because we wanted a better user experience with compliance as well, and then ensure that if we could move guys who were typically just doing the operational work, and that's also one thing. If you're doing an operational work and that's what you do, then you have a risk of possible shift by management. Because what happens is when your role is automated, then they move you into some other business unit. So the best thing for us is to upskill and ensure that for any space we find ourselves, we are indispensable, where they see you and they see that this guy is key and we can't move him. But if you're doing a, straight up operational work, then you're dispensable because they look at you and say, we can automate this process. And then once that is automated, then you're redundant. And then they can move you to sales or move you to, or even tell you, you know what, thanks for all the time you've spent with the business. Would like to ask you to leave. And I think that's my answer to that question.
Okay, thank you. So in summary, try to be indispensable, be valuable.
Right.
Okay. All right, that makes a lot of sense. So my next question, I'm going to take one more question here, then we'll go into some of the questions in the comments. So we'll just alternate it a bit. So my next question is more about transitioning into leadership, right? I know a lot of people mentioned that they would prefer to be an IC over, people management. But what do you think changes when someone moves from being a strong individual contributor to a true leader or operator? So what do you think will change? What do you think needs to change in that regard?
Okay, thanks, Betty. I believe that for you to move or transition into a leadership role, there are key things that needs to change. One, your focus needs to change, your behavior needs to change, and your risk and accountability needs to change. And I'll break down these three areas. For focus, for example, from solving problems, you need to move into preventing problems as a leader. So you're not solving, you're trying to prevent, right? And a contributor would say, yeah, I'm fixing bugs and I'm building features. But a leader would build systems, would build playbooks, would build culture, and that would, some kind of culture that would stop the same issue from recurring across the team. So a leader is saying, I want to, build a system that will prevent failures. But an individual contributor is just always fixing the problem. So that's a difference. from a focus standpoint as well, you have to move from I did it to we did it, right? So the leaders always measure success by team, right? You heard me when I also mentioned the one man. I said myself and my team. That's how because I alone couldn't deliver one bank. There's so many other stakeholders who built it. And that's where you see sometimes when people are given an award, they always, say, sharing this award with the team who delivered. You also need to move from a technical answer to navigating ambiguity, right? So as leaders, you need to move away from vague responses or answers to business problems. On the behavioral part, you need to stop being the smartest person in the room. Okay? Because if you're a leader, you can't know everything, right? So you can't say I'm the smartest. You always need to learn, from your team members. As a leader as well, you also need to absorb pressure and not pass it down to your team members. I remember in Sterling, and I learned this. No, I wasn't passing. I wasn't passing because I learned from my own boss, Moron Folubashiro. He was GM then, and when I was in Sterling, we'll get a lot of bashing. Digital is like the face of the bank, right? So when there are issues or when something breaks, the MD gets to know immediately because he has people who are using it. And when we get those bashing in ESCO meetings, my boss then would take it and then we'll just call myself and some of the team leads into a meeting and he'll just say, guys, you know what, I need you guys to do this. And the way he got the bashing is not the same way, he's passing it down to us. And I think I learned that from him as well. And I can attest that most of my team members, while I was in Sterling until now, are always very happy and open to engage because I don't pass the heat. I try to assimilate it, and that's what leaders do, and that's why you're being paid the leader money you get paid, right? To be able to take things, understand it, and think through how to solve it, right? You also need as a leader to manage energy, trust, and not just tasks, right? So leaders, being a leader, you need to be able to manage trust. People need to trust you. They need to be able to come to you to say, when I meet or speak with Betty, I'm sure I'm going to get this thing resolved. So moving to risk and accountability, right? As a leader, you also need to own your outcome and not activities. And you need to make hard calls on people. And that's one very dicey area, right? Individual contributors most times avoid difficult conversations, right? But leaders are those who must address things like, for example, underperformance, mediate conflicts, sometimes, speak to you about your performance and tell you, I don't think this output is up to par, and then, having difficult conversations. And that's one key area that you being a leader, you must be able to do. I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay. That's actually very interesting. I know that over the course of my career, I've had like several types of managers, but the ones that were really good leaders, I see them and I know that, okay, when I become a leader, this is exactly, how I'm going to do it. So yeah, you don't exactly know how you are impacting people with the way you are handling issues. You don't know who is watching and what they're picking up from you in the long term. All right, thank you. So let's move to some of the questions in the comments. So there's a question from Akin. He says, how do you continue learning and staying relevant in such a fast-moving industry?
I think we've touched a bit on those. How do you become relevant in a fast-moving industry? Is don't let the boss leave you. You have to always jump on the boss, right? You have to keep yourself abreast of the changes. You need to keep yourself abreast of the new things in the space. So you need to not sit down in your comfort zone and your silos and just be operational. You need to do a lot of research. You need to understand what's going on in the fintech space. For example, right now, digital and virtual assets is the future, right? So we need to start to key into that space. CBN and regulators try to stifle that, but I think 2025, the Act, Digital Asset Act and Securities was released. And what that means is that as we move into the next decade or 10 years, we'll not just be speaking only about fiat money, for example, with Bitcoins, the stablecoin USDT would be part of the ecosystem where from the banking app, you could do whatever you're doing now in all those fintech apps because it's now regulatory backed and the typical traditional banks are now, operates. It's still vague now because there's not so much understanding in that space. But as we move along, just like when NIP was introduced, right? It took a while before it's now a thing. If you go to the market today, even if you don't have your debit card, you can always transact, transfer. And people have adopted it and they've owned it. So I think that would be my answer to the question. Thanks.
Thank you. We have another question. This one is actually interesting. So it's from Amanda. She says, how do I become visible without it looking like eye service?
Yes, very good question. How do you become visible without making it look like eye service, right? Eye service is more of, making noise every time, right? You want everybody to know. Like I was talking about building a house, and while it's still in carcass, you're already, making noise about it. Complete your implementation, go live. If you're done with your control testing, go live, start to record the numbers, and then start to speak about your wins. Speaking about your win is that I've completed building this application. This and this is what we've been able to, or if you want to start with the number of onboarding and the number of customers or customer base you have, we have X number of customer base. We've done so value in GDV. We have so number in revenue, and we'll start to track quarter one, quarter two. That's been preaching your visibility. That's not eye service because you're speaking about one, the application you built, two, the number of users that you have on it, three, what is running, delivering in terms of GDV, four, what's the revenue you're making as a business, and then five, what your projections are in the next couple of quarters. That alone is a high-level senior communication. Anybody who reads this knows that you know what you're doing because you're not just building, you're also tracking. You're not tracking for now, you're also tracking for the future. And when you start to do this, it's not eye service. You're only, providing information around what you're doing, and you want people to know that I've done this and this is what I'm doing as a going concern.
Okay.
Thanks.
So basically putting the spotlight on what you have actually done, right? Showing results. All right. Thank you. I think that's clear. So I'm going to ask one more question from my list of questions, and then we'll go back to the comments. I'm trying to move as fast as possible so that we don't spend too much time. So my next question is, what is something about fintech careers that is often misunderstood or oversimplified? So what do you think people are getting wrong here?
Okay, so I'll say one thing that is deeply misunderstood in the fintech space in Nigeria is that technical skill alone determines success, right? The reality is that career velocity depends far more on judgment, visibility, and your ability to reduce ambiguity for others than on how elegantly you either code as an engineer or you manage a product as a product manager or vice versa. I'll say, for example, there's a myth, all right? If I build it well, they will notice. Some people say that when I build it well. The truth is, in a fast-moving fintech space, right, great work is sometimes invisible without documentation and communication. So if you don't have proper documentation or communication on whatever work you've done in the fintech space, nobody will notice it, right? Another myth is fintech is just a tech job. I would say it's a regulated financial services job with tech tools, right? Professionals who fail to learn things like CBN guidelines, anti-money laundering, or KYC rules or settlement cycles would end up hitting the ceiling because they are only thinking about coding and not thinking about the other, like I mentioned earlier, areas that are very important in you launching whatever feature or product that you're launching. Some people will say moving fast means shipping features. In a mature fintech, right, moving fast means shipping reliability. Reliability is key. So what it means is you need to let your users or your customers know that your platform is reliable. If you're just spinning out different features and spinning out different functionality on your application, and at the end of the day, people are getting defrauded, what's the objective of spinning out different features when people are skeptical to use your platform because they feel they may not be safe on your platform? So reliability is a watchword. It's actually key. And I would say, yeah. Another myth which I want to mention is where they say leadership means managing people. True leadership in fintech means managing risk and trust, and you can be a staff or an engineer or principal product manager, for example, with 0 direct reports. But if you are the go-to person, right, for how we handle fraud pattern or what the compliance trade-off is, then you're leading because, like I mentioned when we spoke earlier, everybody will come to you to ask questions in those different areas, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have people that are reporting to you, but it means that you're someone that is always being reached out to on specific areas in the business. I think, you know, I'll stop at those points that I've made. Thanks, Betty.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. So let me take some questions in the comments. We have a question from Rihanna. She says, how can I be more strategic at my role? I want to transition from just being a PM to directly contributing to strategic objectives. What do I need to do to be better?
Okay, so she wants to move from just being a project manager to leading teams. Did I get that correctly?
So basically, okay, you're carrying out your tasks, your day-to-day tasks. She doesn't just want it to be task-based, right? I want to do more than just completing my tasks. I want to be more strategic. How can I think long-term and, you know, help the business?
So I think it's very simple in doing that, right? And I think we spoke about it earlier. Being an operational person from being a strategic person. Yeah, you're doing your tasks, but you need to also take on more responsibilities. Like we say in MasterCard, before you're promoted in MasterCard, you need to have started exemplifying the next role, meaning you're doing more than what you're being paid for. And you're doing it with ease. And then they identify and say, yes, he's ready. Some other corporates will be like, oh, we need to reward this person because he or she has done or closed X number of tickets. I think in the fintech space is different. You need to start to identify that extra duty, extra work, not necessarily what the task that you're being asked to deliver on, but you're taking on more responsibilities around and in addition to what you're doing. When you start to do that, leadership or people managers will start to see you and start to recommend to say, yes, I think we can move Betty from just project manager to now a program manager, which is, you know, more bigger, rather than just saying, oh, from what Betty has shown, I think she's just good at just project managing a single project. She doesn't have the bandwidth yet to be able to take on multiple projects to be a program manager. When you start to show that I can take on multiple projects, then, you know, you start to get engagement from leadership to say, yes, you know, you're delivering more, and then they can start to move you from just being an operator into the strategic role because you've exemplified those traits and you've shown that you have those skill sets to be a program manager. Thanks.
Okay. All right, thank you so much for the question. I'm going to ask one more question, but guys, if you actually want to speak, you can just raise your hand up. And if you don't want to drop it as a comment, if you want to speak, you can raise your hand up and can take it. So I'll ask one more question from my end. Um, how do you think fintech professionals should think about building a long-term career rather than the next role? This one is especially for the job hoppers.
Okay, so I'll say building a long-term fintech career in Nigeria means shifting from chasing titles to ensuring that you're compounding trust, context, and optionality. And I would say bet on infrastructure, not interfaces. Deepen your domain. In whatever you do, be the go-to person, like I mentioned earlier. Build a career around judgments. Always document how you've handled things like ambiguity. For example, CBN releases a guideline. You're the go-to person that everybody's coming to demystify what has been written. You also have a documentation written by yourself, demystifying what CBN had written in terms of the guideline, and you put that in the system, and everybody can always go to that as a reference point. All right. Staying close to revenue or risk. You're somebody who is also looking at like I mentioned earlier, the end goal. Why are we doing this? Why are we building this? What's the objective? Is it customer experience, or is it revenue, or is it to mitigate against fraud? You need to understand all those things. You also need to cultivate relationship across regulators, across your peers, across different startups. And that's the reason why I like this kind of, space where we have different people in the fintech space come together. Apart from just listening to the masterclass, you also have an opportunity to engage other peers and, just network. One key thing, again, is to learn how to lead through influence and not authority. Long-term careers hit ceilings if you can't align product, legal, engineering, and the likes with the title. So you need to practice writing clear memos and running cross-team projects. So as fintech builders, we need to be able to know how to communicate in writing, right? And I think the business guys always have this skill set more than the guys in the engineering space. But if you're in the engineering space and you're a developer, you need to learn it so that when you're communicating clearly. And then lastly, I'll say you need to reinvest in your skills, right? Learn, unlearn, and relearn, like I mentioned the last comment. Thanks, Betty.
All right, thank you so much for that. We have another question from Favor. So Favor is actually a student, and she transitioned from being a Web3 content strategist and community manager to the fintech space. And now she wants to become a fintech marketing strategist. But she said every time she does research about the space, she gets confused. There's a lot of niches and she doesn't really know what to do at this point. And she's basically asking for guidance on how to begin, where to start from, what should she be looking at, how to basically get into the fintech space. So if that's something you could speak on.
Just as an advice, and thanks for the question, I think what I would advise would be that you want to venture into the marketing space. One key thing that you need to do is maybe go to LinkedIn, look out for those that have spent a number of years in this field, and drop them a chat or drop them a message to say, I'd like to, learn more about this field. And then if you throw in maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 different inboxes, at least one person would respond. And then you can start to learn from those people. I think mentorship for me is key. If you're starting, especially when you're starting afresh, it's always a gray area. You don't even know where to start from. But whoever has been in that space and has experience over time will be the best go-to person, right? That you can always reach out to say, I'm starting off. How can you guide me? Where do you think I should start off from? And the good thing about networking in that space is whoever you're reaching out to would now have the responsibility of connecting you into maybe some other corporates that require maybe interns in marketing, or if they have requisition need, right? And then they bring you in. But our advice, reach out, go to LinkedIn, which is a professional space. Look out for, you put in the search field your key skills that you're looking for, marketing, and then you'll see a number or a list of people who are in that space. Check out how long they've spent in that field, and then just inbox them, and then see how it is possible. If you also want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me as well. I can hook you up with the marketing director of MasterCard if he's willing to, mentor you in that space, and then we'll see, where that goes. Thanks.
Okay. Favor, I hope you got that. So don't sleep on it. Yeah, so there's so many people you can reach out to. If you're part of the community, we have a lot of fintech products marketing managers as well. I think we also have Elizabeth. Let me drop her name in the chat so you can reach out to her as well. She's one of the folks doing big things in marketing as well. So yes, make sure you reach out to all of them. You don't know who's going to help you at this point, since you need a lot of guidance. Thank you so much for the offer. Okay, guys, remember, if you have a question, you can raise up your hand or you can drop it in the comments, whichever you feel comfortable with. So let me check if there are still other questions in the comments. I think we've covered everything. So I have one more question for you, right?
Okay.
This is my last question. So if you had to give one piece of advice to someone trying to build a durable, long-term career in fintech today, what would it be?
I think I would say that person should build a reputation for reducing ambiguity under pressure. All right. So it's not typically around how fast or what speed you are, delivering features, or your technical brilliance, or even, let's say, your compliance knowledge. Even though all these things matter, right? But in the Nigerian fintech space, the most durable people are those ones who, for example, when a CBN circular drops on a Friday evening or a fraud pattern shifts overnight, they can calmly say, here's what this means for us. And here are, for example, 3 options, 2 options that I think can work. And here is what we should do first, right? So you see that there's been a pressure, or there's been an instance, this person is not, in quote, under pressure, and has been able to think through how is it possible for us to solve for this, provided options for it, and now presented what he or she says is required to be done first. So I would say that for you to be able to build a reputation for reducing ambiguity under pressure would be a key skill sets, right, that will make you valuable to any company in any cycle. When you're a go-to person in any space, then it means that you are indispensable. Thanks.
Learn to reduce ambiguity under pressure. Yes, got it. Thank you so much for that. There's still one more from the comments that I want us to talk about. So this is from Wisdom. So he says, there's a concern that I have with really big corporates. It's very easy to get lost in the crowd, especially for junior to mid-level people. Sometimes it's on your boss to put you out there, right? Because they have visibility on your work, and not every team lead goes out of their way. I think that's something you mentioned about leadership. It's not just about you, it's about shining the light on your team. Now, he says that it seems better to move to smaller places because the bigger places feel, bigger than you. You are just a small spec in the grand scheme of things. So what do you have to say about this? Because seeing as you also work in a big organization, what do you think people can do to not get lost in the crowd instead of wanting to move to smaller organizations?
Okay, so I want to break it down in this way. So even when you work in a big organization, you have cluster of teams or cluster of units, right? It's a big organization, but you should have a team or you should have a business unit. And so when we compare a fintech, which is a startup, we typically have the mentality that it's a startup, they just have a few number of team members, and then you feel progression can be faster. Yes, sometimes if you have major investors that are putting funds and then they want to move people up. But also in big organizations, you have teams, right? And when you have teams, you have people leaders, right? It is left for you to be able to prove to your team lead or your people leader that you are indispensable, like I mentioned earlier. So even if you're in a big organization, your responsibility is to ensure that apart from being very skilled in what your KPI is and you're delivering that, you also need to be able to exemplify leadership, just like we mentioned earlier, such that you're visible, you're seen, and when there's the need for promotion or elevation, you're top of mind, because over time you've been able to exemplify your essence in the team, your output in the team, how you've come to help the business deliver value, and all that together would single you out from the crowd. So it's all about being that shining star amongst everyone. No matter how much people are in any team, some people are always recognized. No matter how much we all went to school, we all went to secondary schools where they give awards to the best students. No matter how much they are in a particular set or in a particular class, there are some people that will be recognized for their exceptional behavior. So the same thing applies in a big organization where you have many people in a particular team. You just need to stand out, and you need to know what you need to do to stand out. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. So guys, you heard it directly from the source. Try to be a shining light. Don't be an IC, because you cannot be shining light as an IC. Obviously you can't, but yeah, try to put yourself out there and don't just do your work. Sometimes go out of your way. So there was something that you mentioned about taking a look at seculars once it drops and all of that. So that's actually, so if I just want to put it out there that if you are taking a look at these things on your own, you actually don't have to do it on your own. That's part of the things that we within the community. So anytime there's a new secular, we put everything together and we have discussions about it. So everybody just shares what they think about it, how they're going to implement it, basically what it means for the ecosystem. So the point I'm trying to make here is that you don't have to do it alone. That is why we are here. So we have those sessions once a month. It's called Community Hour. So just keep an eye out for that. Okay. Thank you so much. We have some last minute questions. One from Ireoluwa and one from Isaac. So we'll just take those two questions and then we'll wrap up. So the one from Ire says, how do you deal with steering a company towards reliability as opposed to many new features as a middle manager in marketing?
Okay, so I think the question is more on reliability than spinning out features, right?
Yes.
So and this is in marketing. Yeah, and I know that there's one key challenge with the guys in marketing. Business always wants to push out different features or different products that have been pushed out, and sometimes they're saddled with, why are we pushing out so many things to the customer? Because it's like we're just all over the customer's face. The customer will not even know what and what to use, or they might end up being too disturbed. Reliability is key, right? And I think reliability has to do with the functionality of the application. And there are drivers back in that ensures that works, because sometimes backend as well, you need to ensure that you have failover points when the system is down. You're able to recover quickly based on your backup, right? But in the marketing space, I think it's having to infuse one, prioritize what product features you want to push out. So you can't push out all the product features that you have, for example, because that would be too much on the customer. But put priority on them. Priority could mean, okay, which of these features are more revenue driven? Are we making more money from feature 1 or feature 2, right? And then you put that as priority, because when customers use it, so, the bank or the corporate or the fintech makes more money. And then you now embed or coin in your reliability spin in there. So what you're doing is you end up addressing two needs, which is the reliability need and also the product feature need, with justification. I'm pushing this feature because I know from a revenue standpoint, if I have more customers use this particular product, then we make more money. And at the same time, I'm backing it up with a subtle message on platform reliability. So if I'm in your space, that's the approach I'm going to be adopting. Thanks.
Okay. Irelu, I hope you got that. So basically backing up your suggestions with data to say why exactly you think we should go that direction. All right, thank you. So for our last question, thank you guys so much for asking questions. This was really insightful. So now, oh my God, we're at the end. But yeah, so this last question is from Isaac, and his question is more from a technical standpoint. He's a developer. So he says, what is the best advice you would give to beginner developers looking forward to growing and becoming industry experts in the fintech space? What are the technical skills that are necessary to learn during their journey?
I'll say show up and show right? Always be in the room as a fresher in the development space. Always show up. Don't be the one to say, no, I don't want to be involved, or you're hiding. Always be visible. When you're starting up, right? Excuse me, there's nobody who has gotten to a senior role or a leadership role that had not undergone, through the ropes. You have to start up from somewhere. And in starting up, you also need to challenge yourself. You need to be given different tasks that are very, very difficult to hack. And that's actually building yourself and also building your career, because it means that it's like joining the army, right? When you want to join the army, they don't just give you the camouflage and say, yeah, you're in. You undergo rigorous trainings, right? If you want to join the Navy, for example, there are water trainings that you undergo that are, sometimes some people die, going through that. So that's the same process in fintech. That's the same process in product management. It's the same process in program management. It's the same when you're starting off afresh. It's always looking very difficult and hard. But when you start to build and you start to understand your process and your dynamics, then it starts to become easy. So as a newbie, I would say always be part of every project. Fine, they're going to assign you to your own project, but try and do more in terms of having to see how you can be involved in other projects where you, even if you're not participating full time, you're participating partially, just to understand what's going on. And then by the time you add up all your different expenses, it's going to be a positive for you and removing you from that isolated space where it's just what you know and what you're doing, to being a rounded person who understands a bit of every pieces, and that will help you in the long run. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for that. Isaac, I hope you got that. So you need to show up, especially since you're in the early stages of your career. All right. Oh my God, guys, I'm feeling so emotional. This was such a lovely session, and personally, I took a lot from it. Learning to show up right, communicating without ambiguity, writing better memos, and showing up and contributing and being a lot more visible within the space. There's so much that we can take from this. So thank you so much for taking your time out today to share with us. I know you could have been doing anything else, but you chose to
Thanks.
spend your Saturday
Thanks
morning
for
with.
thanks for inviting me. Thanks for having me on. And I appreciate the questions and everybody on the call. See you all at the top.
Yes, you're already there, but we'll come and meet you there. Don't worry. Guys, please let's appreciate him. And also, we also dropped a post on Twitter. So if you really enjoyed the session, you can talk about what you think about it. Yes, Shalom, I will. Thank you. You can also drop what you think about the session, what you appreciate about it, because we want to know, what you got out of this session. So Elizabeth will be dropping the link shortly, and you can do that. But thank you once again, Adekunle, for sharing with us. It's not every day that you get access to someone that is a director at Mastercard, to show you the ropes. So yeah, thank you so much, guys. Um,
Thank
okay.
you.
So, guys, like I mentioned, we also have a community. It's a very tight knit community. Um, we did it that way because we want everybody to feel at ease and to be able to share their opinions and their thoughts and basically what they think about what's happening. So, if you're not already part of the community, so please feel free to join. Like I mentioned, circulars are some of the things that we talk about, and it's not just that, it's basically everything that's happening in the fintech space. So if you want to stay up to date, you want to be amongst people that are also on the same path as you, this is the space that you need to be in. So we'll be dropping the link in the comment section for you to join. If you're not already there, well, you've already seen what it looks like, so I don't need to say too much. So you can also subscribe to our newsletter. We have a newsletter that we send out once a month. So it's basically everything fintech, breaking it down into, small pieces just so that anybody can easily understand it. You don't have to stress yourself too much to understand what's going on within the space. So we already do that for you. All you need to do is to subscribe. We'll be dropping the link in the comments as well. So you can just go through all of that and can also keep an eye out for our future events because we have like a lot of sessions. We have a lot of sessions around this. So it's not just about career. We are also talking about what's happening within the space. We're also talking about the new technologies, right? Building products in different sectors. So there's so much that you can learn. It doesn't matter if you're working in lending or embedded banking, there's something for everybody. So you can join us. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have a YouTube channel, so we put up, recordings of past sessions. So if you miss out on anything, you can actually go back and watch some of these sessions. So yeah, please follow us on social media. Yes, follow us on social media. So our links are already in the comments. So follow us. You can just comment on our posts, and you can, if you have any other feedback on something you think we should do or what you think we can do better, you can reach out to us and share it with us. So remember, at Builders in Fintech, we're not just focused on, just putting out resources and all of that. We're all about building and shaping the future of the ecosystem. So don't think about it like, okay, I want to know what's happening. Don't just look at it like another news forum for you to see what's happening. You actually have to contribute because that's one of the major things that we ask people when they are joining the community. What do you need help with and how can you contribute? So it's a give and take situation. So yeah, so thank you everyone for joining this session. The link to the post is already in the chat, so you can just go there. It's on either on Twitter or on LinkedIn, and say a big thank you to Adekunle for sharing with us, basically sharing your insight on what you thought about the session, how you felt. Personally, I took a lot out of this, and like you said, I can't wait to meet him at the top. So it's left to you guys. You want to meet us there? So I'll see you there. So thank you, everyone, and have a lovely weekend. We'll see you at the next session. Oh, lastly, one more thing before I go. Please, you guys don't go yet. There's one more thing. We're having a physical event next month. So we'll be BF is going to be 1 year in June. Yay! And we'll be having our first physical event. So we'd love to see you there. We're going to be posting details about this event next week. So you'll see everything that you need to know. But it's going to be very impactful. If you come to some of our virtual sessions, you know that it's not just your regular session where you're just talking about everything fintech. There's so much happening and it's going to be very engaging. So you don't want to miss it. So just follow our social media, follow all of them. Don't just follow one, follow all of them, and you see more information about it. So we look forward to hosting you all come June 2026. So all right, thank you everyone and have a lovely weekend. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
All right, bye everyone. Bye everyone.